I was wrong about one of my philosophies in life. And it was that the root cause of inequality was education. I thought that if we could make sure that we could offer quality, rigorous education to every single child, no matter what zip code they're born into, that everybody would have equal opportunity, and we could change the country, or change the world that way. Because another one of my philosophies is, and it's not really mine, I think it's just a principle of life, that you can't solve problems unless you actually address the root cause. If we only attack the symptom of the cause, we can actually make it worse, let alone not solve it. So, as I was teaching, I taught for 10 years in a low-income neighborhood, serving predominantly first and second generations of Central Mexico. I taught English, and then I also designed and taught an intervention program for students who were at risk of not graduating. And it was through my experience there that, one issue after another, that I saw that there's a deeper root cause, and it's the corrupting influence of money in our political system. It's what drives the policymakers to pass the policies that influence and govern our lives. And this is why we don't have Medicare for all yet. This is why we no longer have college for all. This is why we have such a growing economic disparity, even though we have the highest GDP that we ever have had, even though we are the richest country in the world. And so, once I realized that that was the root cause, I knew I had to change course, even though I'm really an educator at heart. And it was through my experience with Wolfpack, where I worked in red states, blue states, purple states, working with legislators, knocking on doors of constituents, that I realized a few things. One is they truly are dividing us and conquering us and causing us to spend so much time fighting each other instead of realizing just how much we have in common and coming together to ultimately fight the corporate class that is preying on our fears. And so when I saw this, in 2016 during the election, I was knocking on doors in Trumpville and in Burnsville and Clintonville and Steinville. I was knocking on doors and sitting down with people who had Trump and Confederate flags all over their houses, and in super deep blue Bernie states as well. And it's the same conversation every single time. This happened with all the legislators I worked with as well. Because people ultimately know that corruption doesn't discriminate. And so, seeing how much we all actually agree, but how little we're getting done, and then also understanding and being victim to how strong the propaganda is to fight policies that actually represent people from being passed, I realized there's no way we're going to get this done. We can kick and scream and holler, and we have been for decades. There's no way we're going to get this done unless we run for office ourselves. And these issues are urgent. What's happening to our environment is urgent. What's happening to our criminal justice system is urgent. What's happening with our foreign policy is urgent. I don't have time to be running for mayor and building a 20, 30-year career in politics that I don't even have any desire for. We need to run for all offices, but those of us who can need to run for the highest office because it starts at the federal level in a lot of ways. And we need to do it by running campaigns with integrity, with the same kind of integrity that we're fighting for in this country. That means, as you know, not taking corporate money, not taking PAC money, not taking any kind of dark money. And if we can't do it, if we can't run for office, because it is hard with privately funded elections, we need publicly funded elections to replace that. If we can't do that, then we need to put everything we can into those who are, which is obviously why you're here today. So thank you very, very much. And I'll just finish by saying, you know, despite the fact that I am incredibly concerned about what's happening in the world right now, and downright pissed off, I'm also very hopeful because I know we have the capacity. I know we have the money. It's just a matter of having people in office who have the willpower.
have it, yeah.
People who have no desire for power. The only power they have is the willpower to get it done, essentially. And there's an energy right now there's a big opportunity right now for us to have these upsets because people are ready for real people, not phony people to run for office. We've seen the phonies actually turn out to be just as real as everybody else when their past is revealed. We're done with it. We want real, honest actors who are going to come to our communities like this, sit down and have conversations with us and figure it out together. And so if we don't capitalize on this shift that's happening right now, I think it will be our fault for what's going to happen to this country. And that's why I decided to run now and not wait until later. I really feel like it's my responsibility. So, and y'all know Dianne Feinstein is the epitome of everything we're talking about. Question. Whatsoever. Are you okay? Oh yeah. Okay, you looked emotional. Oh.
Well, your speech is very,
What fun,
No, don't apologize. Yeah.
Would you be willing to support a movement like the Israeli movement right now, the BDS campaign, the Palestinians?
The boycott and divestment?
Some of the same corporations that are committing crimes in other parts of the world to make profits, multinational corporations attached to America, are the ones that are going to be on the BDS list. As active members of the boycott, can we implement our own boycotts here in the United States once you're a senator to target those companies?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's a wonderful idea. Yeah. I think boycotting is one of the strongest ways that we can actually put pressure on companies that have a profit to make. And it's a great way to help educate people. But you're talking about something different from the boycott and divestment.
I'm talking about criminalizing the behaviors of these corporations overseas in these venues where they're causing wars to make profits for their stockholders.
Yeah. And that'll be easy for me to do because I'm not going to be taking money from them like many of our legislators are.
So to put actual sanctions on them is what I want, not just to boycott them.
Yeah.
But to have people, to encourage people to divest, to make it illegal to invest in corporations doing certain things, and to sanction them for doing it.
We absolutely should be. It's a crime that we aren't doing that yet. That we don't put sanctions on any country that is essentially investing and contributing to directly and indirectly these humanitarian crimes against humanity, essentially. So yes.
Because we have, in my opinion, what we call corporate interlock, where you have multiple people on the same board of directors across various fields. So they may be a board of directors on a bank, but they're also a board of directors on General Electric or other industries. And
yeah.
I think we need to make that illegal as well.
Oh yeah, this huge conflict of interest, absolutely. That's one of the many ways to be able to break up this corporate monopoly that we have in every industry. Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Speaking of corporate monopolies,
yeah.
I think that the pharmaceuticals are...
Can you guys hear now?
Can you hear me? I can speak louder.
Okay.
I think that the pharmaceuticals are one of the biggest culprits here as far as the monopolies and the corruption and the money, the profit-driven system that we see in healthcare. So my question is, and I'm going to read off of the Justice Democrats website, and this is on the section of the war on drugs. And it says, what you put in your own body is your own business and your own right. A free society should allow individuals to make their own choices about their bodies. I support that 100%. So my question to you is, do you support this statement? And if you do, does it also apply to vaccination? Because as you probably know, in California a couple of years ago, a law was passed taking away a parent's right to opt out of mandated vaccines for either religious or philosophical objections.
Yeah.
So this is in my mind, pharmaceutical dream come true.
Yeah.
So I want to know what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah. The war on... Well, first of all, let me just say, I support decriminalizing all drugs. And the war on drugs, it's not just about what you were saying, which is respecting every person's right to choose what they put into their body and what they do to their body and how they live their life. but it's also to address what's happening in our criminal justice system as well.
Yeah.
So all of that combined, it's a no-brainer for me that we need to address that. And as far as the vaccines go, I think that's along the same lines as well, making sure that people have the right to choose whether or not they're going to vaccinate their own children or not, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I want to learn more about, and you can probably help school me on this, is the concern I hear from those who say, well, if my child's on a playground with somebody who's sick because they haven't been vaccinated, etc., what about what that does to them and their health and so forth? Is that dangerous to the public? So it's always a matter of like balancing all of that, and those are the questions I always have with everything is, what are the pros and cons? What are the unintended consequences? And I will always ask that with everything, even with things that I support, which is that, I still need to be aware and honest with my constituents about what those unintended consequences are.
Right. And I think when we look at the unintended consequences of not vaccinating,
right,
we also need to look at the unintended consequences of vaccinating.
Exactly.
Because there is reams of research and literature that shows that, in fact, they are harmful to certain people, and there's no tests done. The doctors don't say, oh, let me do a genetic test with your child before we give them X, Y, and Z. It's a one-size-fits-all.
Right.
And we do know that some children are sensitive to pollen. We know some children are sensitive to peanuts. So it goes by me unstated that some children are going to be sensitive to formaldehyde or aluminum or antibiotics, things that are routinely in vaccines for very young children. And they're given many doses at once so that the load of aluminum is well beyond what's the standard daily intake. But we can talk about this forever. I don't want to take up your whole time.
But no, it's so fascinating. I'm really glad you bring it up, and I think really the bottom line is being able to have honest conversations about unintended consequences on both sides or all sides of any issues is what I want us in politics to start doing more of. Because what we have a lot of times is politicians grandstanding in order to appease one side over another. And I just want you all to know that I'm going to work really hard to not do that. I want to be able to say, this is why I support this, but I also maybe can understand this side, but this is the way I'm going to vote because. But we do need to be conscious of, you know, those unintended consequences. Because when we can have that conversation, then sometimes we can arrive at some creative solutions we otherwise wouldn't have thought of, such as what you're going into, where it's like, well, maybe we just don't have the science yet to allow people to know what kind of vaccines are best and to make sure that it is adjusted to each child. Or, you know, some people don't need it and at all, so we don't even need to be worried about them on the playground. And so we can have those conversations when we're really transparent and honest about that. So,
and I do think in a free society, any compulsory medical treatment, for me, is important, no matter what that treatment is.
Yeah.
Unless, obviously, you're deemed that you need to be hospitalized because you're mentally incompetent. And then there's a whole bunch of different rules. But I'll let you take another question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, I'll go over here and then I'll go back and forth. Yes.
So one issue I've heard expressed by some Californians is that by not supporting Einstein, we're losing a senator who has a lot of seniority. I don't know, like, I feel like she's never really represented the people of California. But how do you respond to people who say, well, now we're going to have very, because I feel like our state, as a population, we already don't get represented. And the primaries were very late stage. The electoral college undermines the impact that all of the new people have to experience this country. We have the largest economy in the world, and yet the country doesn't really seem to follow our leadership as I think that we should. I feel like we ought to have more representation. I don't think Diane has done that, but I hear that people say, oh, she's already got seniority, so that's why we should. You know, so what can we say to counteract that?
I have so many things to say about that, but I think to cut right to it is she's running her campaign. This is her actual strategy. She says it, so it's to run it that she has seniority over everybody else, which means you need me to protect you from Trump and Russia. That is what she's running it on. Now, if there are people who are making their vote this year based on being afraid of them, we can help them to understand that Trump and Russia are symptoms of the problem. We get rid of that, we're still going to have the problems that we've had for decades. So what we need is people who understand how systemic the issues are. And Dianne Feinstein clearly doesn't. And she's running her campaign that way. Also, it's simply a marketing tactic that your typical politician does to strike fear into your voters because you have no respect for their intelligence to simply vote against the other person. You can tell them Alison Hartson's running her campaign on what we are capable of, on who you should be voting for, not just voting against. I'm not here to protect us from Feinstein. I'm here to actually get at the heart of the system itself. And I've seen in conversations with people that really helps, but just be aware that it won't jive with most people, because most people who even start to think that, they're locked in already as a Feinstein supporter, and that's going to be their reason. But you never know, once they're actually there in the voting booth, what might actually resonate with them. I'm going to come back to you. I was going to go to him, yes.
Okay, I wonder if there's anyone from the press here, and if not, what can we do so that there would be next time or in other places? In other words, as an organization, as an effort, as a campaign, one of the things that seems to be fundamentally important is to be recognized by more people. In this community, Kane has done a lot of door-to-door. In a way, we're doing that, at whatever level. I mean, you could always do more, but we are doing that. I don't know, you may say that this isn't the right forum for that, and you are getting local press when you come to a town or this town, but clearly that's an issue that we need to address square on.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what you might have to say about that.
Courtney, I'll wait on the food.
It's not happening yet.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. Okay, so you guys all heard that about press? Okay, so I have somebody who works on press. You can email her, lisa@alisonhartson.com, just LISA. If you have any local media, anybody you have in mind that you think would be helpful for the campaign itself to reach out to them, let Lisa know. She has a long list of hundreds of people she reaches out to almost daily throughout California to get me on the press. But the most effective thing is actually to come from the community.
Yeah.
And usually. And so that's why Courtney started to touch on this. We have what's called the media, well, it's actually called the Black Ops team. It's our media blackout team where we have volunteers, supporters actually reaching out to journalists who may be doing a story on something that we think they'd be interested in covering because of what the topics they tend to cover. Or they might do a story where they only talk about Feinstein and De Leon, and so they reach out to them and say, hey, you should know about Hartson. So you can help in those ways as well. But we've also had people reach out to their own local radio as one example to say, hey, I'm a listener, I love you, you really have to have Alison on. That will go further than anything else because you're a supporter and, they respond. And it's actually worked. We've now had, I don't know, maybe 5 different interviews, maybe more at this point. I'm starting to lose track. But I think about 5 different interviews now I've had because supporters reach out to journalists, even though my campaign's been doing it for months.
So, for example, your campaign is aided by all these many volunteers. If every volunteer were in their community to identify what the local press are and essentially make it like a letter to the editor, but it's, even if it doesn't get published as a letter to the editor, it is a letter to the editor, the person who's making decisions about what gets covered. And
you can write op-eds too, in
Yeah.
your local newspaper, if people read newspapers anymore, I don't know.
The website comment section.
Yeah.
Those for the TV station and the newspapers, the websites have the comment sections also.
Yeah. I had 2 or 3 interviews just this week alone based on supporters reaching out to the journalists. Like they really are, especially in like independent media, more alternative media or local, they're way more receptive. Now, CNN and MSNBC and NPR are a whole nother ball game. They're going to ignore me until the general. So,
but if everyone who's gone door to door in San Luis were to contact local press once and say, I'm a volunteer and I know there are other volunteers, and if that message showed up again and again and again, I just have to believe that, especially in a community like this, a university town, there's going to be coverage that happens just because we did that.
Absolutely, or like take the pictures Courtney's taking. Hi, are you here for this? Okay, can you hear okay? Thank you for being here. Yeah, so, you know, take the pictures that Courtney's taking here and like send them to him and be like, hey, there is a movement happening here. Like, you don't want to miss this, because the journalists want stories.
Oh, absolutely.
So you tell them like, hey, you don't want to miss what's happening. It's bubbling, it's surfacing, and no poll is going to show what my campaign is actually doing right now, especially since they rigged the polls. Have you guys heard about how they've rigged the polls?
Tell us.
No.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Oh, these stories are almost comical. They almost make me laugh. I'm like so proud to be part of being rigged. I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you. We're
You and
threatened
Bernie.
by us. Yeah. So, as one example, there's been a few. There was a poll run that, and you know, there's over 30 people running in this race, you know, across the political spectrum. And there was a poll done that only listed 2 people in it, and then undecided. Diane Feinstein and Kevin Ridley. Then the corporate media, MSNBC, CNN, local TV news. It came into my living room. That's how I found out about it. My parents were watching it, and they were like, what load of crap is this? So the news says there's been a poll done on the U.S. Senate California race, and it turns out that the top 2 candidates are, and they repeated their names over and over again, and then they said this line, clearly these are the top 2 that California wants. Clearly this is who you want. Clearly this is who you want. Clearly this is who you want, right? So I look up the poll and I find out that they only actually put 2 candidates in there. So, but then that's how propaganda works. Number one, you're hearing their name over and over again, because it really is just a name recognition thing. And then you also start to think when you go to vote, well, gosh, I don't know much about them. I don't really know if I'm crazy about them, but I don't know who any of these other people are. I'm not just going to throw my vote away. I guess I'll vote for one of them. And so the average poll cost to run in California $40,000. Now, the maximum amount you can give to a federal candidate is $2,700 per leg. $2,700 in the primary, $2,700 in the general. So, the way to get around that is to run a poll for me for $40,000 and rig it in my favor. That's just one of the many ways that campaign finance reform and corruption work. That's how dark money works. That's why I say to people, like, you know, I don't take PAC money, but no other dark money either. That's just another dark money route. And so then, on top of that, if I want to run an ad on TV, local TV, on like the worst spot ever that maybe a 7-year-old's going to watch, is going to cost me $35 to run one time. But if I want to make sure that the voters are going to see it, it's going to cost thousands of dollars. If I were to actually get as much coverage as those 2 candidates get on CNN, MSNBC, local news, and then talking about that $40,000 poll, you're looking at least $100,000, at least, being given to them without having to account for it anywhere in campaign finance reporting. So that's how elections get rigged. That's what's been happening. Yeah. But here's the good news. There was a poll run that actually had all of the candidates on it, and I was 1 percentage point behind Haley. And you know that this is just top 2, right? So I'm just fighting hard to get 2nd place. Who says that? That's all we need to get in the general. And how they drew like machine versus the people face off. Exactly. Yes.
Good question. Oh wait, sorry.
Oh yeah, that's you. That's you. Yeah.
I have to go. But I want to get my question out is that it's kind of like the mindset thing is how are you going to address the divide in the Democratic with progressive establishment? Because even locally, that's been a big tension, and it's really prevented us from being as effective as we can. We've had some real gridlock in our county Democratic discussions, and instead we're focused on small things that aren't about supporting our candidates on occasion. So,
and because of what you're talking about, the fight like in the left amongst the infighting, right?
exactly.
Well, a big part of that is because we're not all rated Democrats, or they aren't Democrats. This whole two-party system is a farce, as you know, and people on the who think more left are being squeezed into one party, and I don't know that we can actually really solve that until we get a 3+ party system. And that's going to come with policies like ranked choice voting or approval voting and getting rid of super delegates and democratizing the Democratic Party and so forth. Another thing that's happening with that, and this is from my own experience in political activism, is in all honesty, it's a lack of leadership. So what happens is these groups get together and catty behavior happens like in a classroom. Like sometimes I feel like, I think Corey's heard me say this, I feel like I'm running for like class officer in high school or like ASB or something, or like class president. The way that people are like, we talk about the elite having like ego over like what's in the best interest of the people, but we do it ourselves. And we lose sight of what's truly important with the urgency of these policies and the movement. If we had enough leaders in our organizations reminding everybody as soon as cattiness started to happen, you guys, let's bring it back, let's bring it back. I promise you, you will see a difference. It's a cultural attitude. I went into Wolfpack and it was male-centered, it was hyper-aggressive, and the culture was very toxic. And one of my biggest goals was to turn that culture around, because if you've never heard of it before, look it up. There's great stuff to read on the internet about this. Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. There's an article, there's a book, there's some stuff on YouTube about it. And it gives a lot of comparisons to like football, why the Patriots have just dominated the field, because of the culture and their coach understanding how much more important that is in their team than any strategy. We can have the best policies, we can have the best strategy. If we don't have people in office and in our activist groups who have the leadership ability to understand how important culture is, we will fall apart. And this is why I've been saying that what we need is we need some therapy for the U.S. We need some like psychologists in office or something. But I know that's not like a one like single tangible thing, but I know from my own experience too, like that's what it's going to take. And if you guys here with your slow progressives can help yourselves to learn more about that culture eat strategy for breakfast, work really hard together as leaders around that, I think you'll see a big difference. I hope that helps.
It does. It applies.
Don't apologize. No, thank you. Oh yeah. We'll keep going, but we want to take a group picture really quick. Does that work?
Do it on the stairs. You guys can all just stand on the stairs.
Okay.